funeral home, I suppose, has become probably the number one item that we have, although I've always believed that the number one item obviously is the way the person is laid out. So when a family come to visit the funeral home, they're obviously going to be impressed maybe with the facility that we have loads of parking, that's very well lit. And as soon as they enter the funeral home, then if it's cold outside, they'll find that the funeral home is very warm, or if it's warm outside, they'll find that the funeral home is cool because we have air conditioning. The funeral home is brightly lit. You first of all walk into the lobby in the front, which gives you a little bit of a time before you have to go to either of the two rooms to see where the person belonged to is laid out. So I suppose this gives you a little bit of time to kind of brace yourself and get yourself into that maybe frame of mind. But the one thing we do find is when we're talking to families afterwards that, when we ask them about what was good and what was bad about the funeral, I suppose the one thing that they do mention at all times is the facility that we had. They keep going on about the wonderful facility that we had. And I suppose, apart from the facility being, a great spacious setup, I suppose what they're really referring to maybe too is that as soon as they contacted us that, everything was kind of put into place that we came up with a plan that suited them, that we moved the funeral a little bit forward. We gave them maybe an option of time frames. So I suppose when they refer to the premises or the funeral home, I suppose they're probably referring maybe to everything that is in the funeral home or every service that they received. So when they call us, like part of our service would be to organise clergy, gravediggers, florists, musicians, anything that really has anything to do with the funeral. We will organise it for them. And I suppose when they're talking about the funeral home, that maybe they are kind of referring in a small way maybe to the full kind of service package that they got. I've always believed that the funeral home is a very big item in your funeral business, that if you build it correctly and build it right, it will crown your business. I was very lucky to get this big site. I bought the site back in 95 and I built and opened the funeral home in 96. And over the years, I've always kind of come up with little projects. These projects, I think, kind of keep me going. I'm a bit of a project junkie. So for argument's sake, I remember one year I decided we'd get a new hearse, and that became my project for that year. And maybe a few years ago then I decided we'd do up our bathrooms. So we completely redesigned our bathrooms, moved our hearse from where it was and turned that into a bathroom facility. So we ended up with 3 good-sized bathrooms and a huge big disabled bathroom as well, which were completely up to date and very, very modern. And they were something that greatly added to our funeral service, because I suppose when people saw the condition and the way that we keep the bathrooms and the way they were set up, that they said, well, if they keep the bathrooms like this, obviously the rest of the funeral home is run to the same standard. The same year then we put in a little family room, which means that apart from the 2 reposing rooms, you now have a little family room where you can take somebody, if you meet somebody that you want to have a quiet chat with, maybe a clergy person or somebody who's doing something to do with the funeral, or somebody maybe you just haven't met for a long, long time and you just want to have a chat. You now have the option of this lovely family room, somewhere lovely to take them. And of course, when you come into the funeral home, first of all, you're met with the canopy at the front, so you're sheltered straight away. But then when you walk into the front lobby, you have a place where you can get tea or coffee or a little biscuit, something I suppose that kind of maybe eases your burden a small little bit. And definitely, if I travelled to a funeral home, to a long distance to a funeral home to attend a funeral, if I just got a cup of tea or coffee, I know it would refresh you. And then, of course, to be able to use the facilities is a marvellous setup, and you're ready again then to take your journey back home. So I suppose that is probably where families are coming from. They say that the one thing they remember big time about the whole funeral when they look at it afterwards is the facility here. I suppose it's great too that they know that when we collect a person, for argument's sake, in a hospital or a nursing home or in their house, they know that when we bring the person here, that that's where they're going. They stay here. They don't go somewhere else. And they're kept here as long as the family wish. So the next time they move from here, maybe it's when we're going to the church, or if we're going to a burial or a crematorium. Another project then I came across, of course, was to put in a little crematorium chapel. So, of course, we put in our own little crematorium chapel, which means a family now can have their cremation service here, which means it saves them travelling to the crematorium, something that has greatly added to our funeral service. And it's another one of my little projects that I came up with over the years. And I find that these little projects kind of keep me going, they keep me interested, and I suppose they're also adding to our funeral service at all times. The embalming room, I suppose, is kept to a very, very high standard, and that gave me several kind of projects over the years, because I put in new different items into that just to keep it up to date and keep it modern. And I suppose one of the advantages we have here that some funeral homes don't have is that I'm actually doing the embalming myself, which means I'm going to invest and make sure that the embalming room is kept very, very up to date, as much as I can at least. So the next project, I don't know what it is yet, but I'm sure I'll come up with something. I must say I love when we're doing something new in the place, and I love when we're improving the business, and I suppose that keeps me interested. And even these little videos that we're doing lately have kind of given me a new interest, and I've kind of broadened my horizons, and I've got a bit into how to work cameras and how to work lighting. And this, I suppose, is again adding to our funeral business, that it is another little plus that will help the funeral business down the road. Gives people an insight to it. One thing I do notice, and I noticed that I was on a funeral a few months ago, and it was in a different town to ourselves. When I went to the house to discuss with the family what arrangements they'd required, I met some people who were from up the country. And it was amazing the information they knew about both myself and the funeral business. Just, I suppose, from watching the different kind of YouTube videos and watching what we put on our Facebook channel or whatever the case may be. But they had a serious knowledge and information about what goes on here and what facilities we had and how we have developed them over the years. So I suppose it is nice to keep a kind of a little kind of a medium, kind of a presence there at all times that doesn't do the business any harm. And I suppose it does move us on a little bit as well. And this, I suppose, media kind of interest kind of developed when we started to do our live streaming from the funeral home. This is going back a long, long time ago, because I remember even a different funeral home kind of made a big kind of a splash or an advertising about the fact that they had live streaming from their funeral home. And I said, God, we have that for a long, long time. And even people met me downtown and said, God, they made a big splash about the fact that they're doing live streaming from their funeral home. And they said, but you're doing that for years. And of course, where it came into its own and came into its being was when COVID came, when we had a lot of our funeral services here in the funeral home. And we were blessed at the time to have the great Tomas Burke working here. And Tomas was not only a fantastic funeral director, but he also had a brilliant technical knowledge. So we were able to expand our live stream here from the funeral home. And this greatly added to our services during that COVID period. So these live stream facilities are still here to this day and are still used on a regular enough basis. And there's something that's nice to have. It's another addition to your funeral home. So I don't know where or what the next project will be. I'm sure it'll be something that will keep me interested and keep me exciting. And I suppose most importantly, I hope it's something that improves the business and moves it on a little bit further down the road.